Hello. Before we start talking about the book of Genesis, let's talk about who wrote that book. Let me see. Okay. So, first of all, in the entire Bible, there are 66 books. Now, that's the Protestant version. And I believe the Catholic version has an additional 7 books, total of 73. Correct me if I'm wrong. Those extra books are I believe, called the Apocrypha. And Martin Luther, when he started the Reformation, decided that he didn't think those were terribly important to what they were doing, so that's left out. Now, the Ethiopian Bible has an additional book called the Book of Enoch, and Enoch is actually quoted a few times in the New Testament, and so that's. And when we get to Enoch in the Bible, that's going to be an interesting story in itself. So, anyway, and the book of Enoch has 3 books, actually: Enoch 1, Enoch 2, and Enoch 3. Only Enoch 1, the first book of Enoch, is believed to possibly have been a good candidate for inclusion in the total collection of the Bible. So anyway, that's what we know about that. So 66 books in the Bible. Now in the Protestant version, okay, there are approximately 40 authors over approximately 2,000 years. And where do we get that from? Well, it's not quite known who all the authors were. And one thing is certain, that most of them did not know anybody else on that list. Certainly in the New Testament, that was more common for one author to know another author. But 2,000 years, well, I don't know. That might be kind of a fluffy number there. Actually, the first book of the Bible, Genesis, is not the oldest written book in the Bible. The first book that was believed to have been written is the book of Job, which comes along later in the Old Testament collection. So and that goes back possibly before Noah's flood. So anyway, some people say 1,500 years, some say 2,000 years. I don't know if we truly know a good answer to the question. Now, most scholars believe that Moses was the author of the first, not just Genesis, but the first 5 books of the Bible. And now he couldn't have written quite all of it because he did die at the end of the last book. So if I got this in the right order, it's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and then Deuteronomy. I might have Leviticus and Numbers mixed. I'm sorry about that. Hopefully my memory is correct, but it's not terribly important. Deuteronomy, the last of these first 5 books, a lot of it is the final sermon of Moses. But at the end of the book, Moses dies in the last few paragraphs. So obviously someone finished off that book, if indeed Moses did write everything else. Those first 5 books are known as the Torah. Torah, and actually that name is hidden in code in each of these 5 chapters. So I'll talk about that eventually. It's a remarkable story that no one knew about until the 1600s. So anyway, now who is Moses? Who is the guy Moses? Well, he is one of the greatest prophets of the Bible. If everything is correct that we read, then he talked to God, and God talked to him all the time, quite a bit. And Moses got to sort of see God on top of Mount Sinai through a burning bush. He actually did not see the actual God himself, but God represented himself through a burning bush. God wrote down the first 10 commandments for him, handed him the tablets. Moses goes down the mountain, sees the Israelites down there dancing around a golden calf, and gets mad, throws the tablets at him, breaks them. He's got to go back up the mountain and get a second copy from God. So pretty interesting story right there, I think. But anyway, Moses is probably the most famous because he led the exodus of the Israelites out of Egypt. Out of Egypt in 1446 BC. I'll talk about that date here in a minute. And so the Exodus is includes the famous incident where God created the waters of the Red Sea so the Israelites could escape from the pursuing Egyptians. Is there any evidence for all this stuff? Oh, boy, is there. There's lots of evidence for everything that happened in the book of Exodus. And so we'll get to that when we talk about Exodus, the second book of the Bible. Let's see, what else do we know? Well, according to the Bible, Moses died at the age of 120 years. And if the first date was correct, he would have died in 1406 BC. So now whoops, I see my video's interfering with that. I'll have to fix that for future videos. Anyway, the timing of the Bible is based upon the building of the Temple of Solomon. And there is my understanding, there's good archaeological, historical evidence of when the Temple of Solomon was built. And then if you backtrack using biblical chronology, that takes you back to 1446 for the Exodus out of Egypt. And so Moses, if he wrote all this, he would have written it between 1446 and 1406 BC. And so he had 40 years in the wilderness and got all this down. Now, great question is, well, how did Moses write these books? And you know what? We don't know. He never told us. So it could have been, did God give him direct dictation to write these down? Whereas was he inspired? That's a word that's used a lot in how the Bible came to us was through inspiration of God, sort of like receiving prophecies. No one really talked in detail about where'd they get these words from, And one thing I think is going to become evidence as we go through the entire Bible is that humans could not have made all this up. It's just no way humans could have made up this Bible. And I'll give you tons of evidence for that. Okay, so were they inspired by God? I think so, but the exact mechanism, I don't know. I don't even know if Moses wrote things down. Maybe this is a verbal tradition that a scribe eventually wrote down. So I can't tell you. I'm not sure anybody really is totally confident in how that came about. The language of the Old Testament is Hebrew, ancient Hebrew. The language of the New Testament is Greek. So Greek was the international language 2,000 years ago when Jesus lived, and that's why the New Testament was written in Greek. Hebrew, of course, was the language of the Israelites. But the third language, Aramaic, which was I believe is the native language of Jesus, also shows up. I can't remember if it's in the Old Testament, in the New Testament, or appears in both. So really, there's three languages for the Bible, and the Old Testament is mainly, if not entirely, Hebrew. So that's what we know about that. As far as the Old Testament, we have lots and lots of manuscripts that have survived, and a lot of them are just scraps, papyri that have been discovered. The Dead Sea Scrolls came about in the year 1947 when a young man ventured into a cave and discovered all these jars loaded with documents. And so the Dead Sea Scrolls are a big source that helps verify what was written down over 2,000 years ago. And so the translations we've had through time are actually quite accurate. Now, there are little differences here and there. For example, the book of Isaiah exists in complete form and has been dated to 250 BC. Now, the book of Isaiah prophesies Jesus, and in many ways, probably more than any other book of the Bible, and gets it right. And so the book of Isaiah is pretty exciting that we have evidence that prophecy works. Stuff that we know was written 250 years before Jesus came true. And so when you put together, I think between both Testaments, the entire Bible, a number I've heard is around 5,800 documents, and many of them just scraps of paper. from ancient times. And when you examine all these, it's actually quite consistent. You don't see big contradictions where people revise the Bible. You might see little changes where a word spelling might have been changed, or a word might have been changed. But to my knowledge, there's been no discovery of anything out there where someone just decided to rewrite the Bible in their own way, in their own interpretation. Nothing major like that at all. So it's in that respect, it's pretty reliable, and that like that. Okay, well, so why don't we leave it there? And as we say on YouTube land, I'll bug you about this, at least in the early videos. If you like all this, be sure to like and subscribe. Hit those buttons down there. Also down below, hit the share button if that makes sense to you. And leave a comment if you like. All that helps Google to figure out their algorithm on how to make these videos available through their search engine. And okay, so that's important. But also look down below. There will be some links that I will add to that as time goes on. Add links to maybe the next video, the previous one, the introduction, links to a website, if I build a website, and we'll go from there. So be sure to check all that. So I hope you find this journey quite interesting. And now we're about to get into one of the most exciting chapters of the Bible is the very first chapter. And boy, is it loaded with good stuff. So I'll see you in Genesis chapter 1.